This week on This Week's The News, groups demanding local control from councils say spank me harder coalition daddy. Why have a working public health system when it's easier to pay someone else to do it? A mysterious spate of heart attacks hits Tauranga, and the pests in a half shell. All that and more on This Week's The News. Hello there, kia ora, I'm Paul, and this was the episode that was foretold by Nostradamus. Matariki celebrations were held over the Mutu this week as the constellation came into view, marking the Māori New Year. As the country's most recent holiday added to official calendars, it's quickly been adopted nationwide as a way of celebrating what makes Aotearoa unique. Unless you're the Prime Minister, who was not only out of the country for the event, but didn't even acknowledge it on his social media feeds. Said Luxon, seen here with another person who hates being called Winnie the Pooh. Acting Prime Minister David Seymour, seen here with someone he considered the highest calibre of staff, has been making headlines once again for creating targets for his fan base by comparing Christchurch council staff to Russia's Vladimir Putin. Seymour claims that the staff have been bullying Mayor Phil Major into opposing his regulatory standards bill, which South Island leaders have described as an assault and the latest step in a continual erosion of local democracy. Said the acting Prime Minister, unless they agree with me specifically, they're clearly wrong, and that makes them the dictator. This week, the government announced 212 Kāinga Ora projects, totalling 3,479 public houses, will not be going ahead due to what they are calling financial stability issues. Those issues are, of course, how it impacts landlord tax cuts and tobacco company kickbacks. Recent data sets out of the country's main urban centres are showing an exponential rise in homelessness. MSD data shows an exponential drop in emergency housing grants and increase in benefit sanctions. Said the Minister of Housing, Chris Bishop, seen here left hanging after trying to initiate a high-five with media. When asked if this was related, "Oh, look over there, I think I saw a triceratops," before ducking down behind his podium and pretending no one could see him. Associate Health Minister David Seymour, seen here with an argument as to why selling sleeping pills over the counter might be a bad idea, has announced this week changes which will allow for melatonin to eventually be sold over the counter and magic mushrooms to be available by prescription. Said the minister, these changes are based on science and data. And well, that was actually a novel idea for us to try that way to create policy. I wouldn't get too excited. It's not like we're legalizing weed, regulating and looking into how you can use that as a future income stream. What this is an acknowledgement that for many Kiwis the horrors persist, and so do I. And sometimes that stops people getting a good night's sleep. The government has announced plans to scrap the 5-yearly census, instead getting data from government sources like MSD and IRD. Said the minister in charge of the census, Dr. Shane Reti, seen here performing his version of Weird Al Yankovic's Like a Surgeon. Our voters told us they didn't want to answer woke questions about gender identity, while we used the census-specific data to make changes like funding allocations for hospitals, local governance, and set maps for elections. We can't see how a few men who melt down over the idea of being asked their gender identity could be more right. Housing Minister Chris Bishop, seen here impersonating Emperor Palpatine when he says, "Good, let the hate flow through you," has announced this week new overriding powers on local government plans if he feels their choices are going to limit what he calls economic growth. It's a move being championed by organisations like Hobson's Pledge, who have said, "We've always maintained that there should be one person, one vote. And if that person is Chris Bishop, as long as he's not Maori, we're fine with negating everyone else's vote." Labour MP Deborah Russell, seen here finding out her electorate has one of the highest anti-vaccine populations in the country, has apologised for swearing in a scrutiny week hearing with Acting Prime Minister David Seymour. In response to Seymour's opening remarks, Russell was heard saying, "For fuck's sake." National's Ryan Hamilton raised a point of order of the topic, saying he's fine with angry mobs threatening to execute his co-workers and joining Destiny Church during their enough is enough period. But a swear is a step too far. Said Russell afterwards, "The comment was unparliamentary. I should have clarified that this was for the sake of fuck and that there was an apostrophe involved." The Health Minister, Simeon Brown, seen here asking why medical staff, why they're wearing funny pyjamas at work and if their job is really that important if they get to wear pyjamas at work, has announced plans for Te Whatu Ora to give private hospitals 10-year contracts to deal with minor surgery waiting lists in a move called Privatisation. A clear signal to the private sector. Said Labour's health spokesperson, Dr. Aisha Viral, "This sends a clear signal that privatisation will become a part of the normal arrangements in New Zealand. And as an infectious disease expert, I can recognise this infectious disease a mile off." To which Minister Brown said, Well, yeah, how else will our investors make even more money off sick people? King Charles III, seen here wondering if there's any more spoils of colonisation he could add to the photo because he's not sure the message is really coming through, is facing the wrath of racists all over the country by once again calling the country Aotearoa in his Matariki message to the country. Issued on Friday morning, the King wished all the people of Aotearoa, New Zealand an enjoyable holiday, while in Tauranga, 4 heart attacks and 3 strokes were reported to media as old white folks screamed and wailed at the Māorification of the country from behind police safety barriers. Associate Minister of Energy Shane Jones, seen here showing the minimum serving size he's willing to show up for from lobbyists and how he reacts if he shows up and that's smaller than promised, has vowed to restart the oil and gas industry, despite opposition from local groups, a lack of new findings over the past 2 decades, and international investors refusing to commit over concerns the coalition will lose the next election. Said Jones, "How am I meant to score free feeds from these industries at unscheduled meetings, wink wink, if we don't have anything to offer?" And finally, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council is updating its plan to tackle invasive pest species in the region, having added turtle species to the list. Introduced turtles can completely alter the ecosystem if they are released into the wild, eating small fish, plants, freshwater crayfish, and ducklings, and can displace wetland birds by taking over their nesting sites. While turtles can start as small as a 50-cent piece, over their 50-year lifespan they can grow into the size of a dinner plate. So the new plan makes it compulsory to ensure turtles are housed in secure areas to ensure they don't escape. Said a spokesperson for the Regional Council, "We know the area is actually one that Shane Jones has his eyes on for fast-track projects, which we expect to lead to an increase in toxic sludge being released into waterways. And we all know what happens when turtles get covered in toxic sludge, and frankly our insurance won't cover a ninja turtle outbreak in the area." Right, that's this week's The News. Thanks again for all the support this week. Live long, prosper, be one with the Force, and we'll catch you all next week. Hey, thanks for checking out today's video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe so you get more updates as we go along. We deal with these guys for the rest of the year.